mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about episode 3 of the Apple TV limited series, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray, entitled Sensia. Let me start by apologizing for how late I'm getting this video out. I know I said in the video for episodes 1 and 2 that I would try to get these out on Friday night, Saturday morning at the latest. What I failed to consider for this specific week was that Friday my wife had a Broadway show she was going to, so I was alone at home with the kids that night, so I wasn't able to record. And then it was also both my oldest son's birthday was Friday, and my wife's birthday was Saturday. So over this weekend, we went over to her parents' house in Canada to celebrate both birthdays. So I was gone all weekend and also not able to record. So my apologies for promising that I'd be able to get these out routinely on Friday night, Saturday morning, and not getting this to you until Monday night. But about this episode, so something I was looking forward to kind of like being able to deep dive each episode going forward, as opposed to kind of like the overall thoughts / summation that I gained for episodes 1 and 2. And something I've noticed about this show, it's moving really slow. And, you know, I said this for episodes 1 and 2, and I still feel this way, in that despite the fact that it's moving slow, I still find the show to be very engaging. I love I think it relies heavily on the performances of Samuel L. Jackson, Dominique Fishback, and both, not just the performances, but also the chemistry that they have with one another. And I find that compelling enough to continue to find this show really interesting. But I do acknowledge it's moving pretty slow. And if you look at this episode in particular, there are a couple of scenes where they help to provide a little bit of context and a little bit of information about Ptolemy in particular. But there were scenes where I'm just kind of like, okay, do I need this right now? Like, this feels like something that could have been left on the editing room floor. And it's one of those situations where you never know if these scenes are going to be relevant later on in the episode, or later on in the series. But there are a few times, particularly in this episode, where I'm watching something and I'm like, why am I watching this right now? Like, this feels unnecessary. But again, I'm going to get into some of that stuff. I'm going to get into the stuff that I liked as well. I'll talk about... Actually, you know what? I'm going to talk about it right now. One of the scenes, because there are a couple other ones, but one of the scenes that I was referencing about why am I watching this, there were a few scenes where Ptolemy is kind of showing off what all he can remember. He's like, yeah, so-and-so lived across the street from me, and then that person lived down there. And there are a few scenes where this happens. And it got to a point where I'm like, okay, I get it. You remember shit now. Can you remember something pertinent? Can you remember something that matters? Because like there were just too many moments where I'm just like, okay, I get that, but like you remembering the name of the person who lived across the street from you, cool. You remembering shit, but now like I don't need to know that. And if there was just like that one moment, then I wouldn't have minded it. But there were multiple times where I'm like, okay, I get it. You have a good memory. I mean, your memory's coming back. You're remembering shit. Cool. Remember something that matters, because we're moving a little slow here. So just wanted to get that out there. So there are a few aspects of this episode that I wanted to talk about that I find interesting. I'm going to start with how we open the episode. It's a flashback to Coy Dog, essentially laying out for us, the viewer, via flashback, what the treasure is and where it's at. So we find out, I think we can assume it's money. It could be an item, but he refers to it as a black heart, and that it's something that this slave owner, I think he said his name was Clive Miller, he built his wealth on the backs of black people and on black suffering, and he spiked this guy's drink or whatever, knocked him out, stole the treasure, and buried it. Now, again, we don't know exactly what the treasure is. We could assume it might be money, but whatever it is, it was something that this slave owner profited from. It was something that he got where he profited off of the labor of the slaves that he had. And then they go to explain where this is at. And even this I found to be a little bit much. Like, there's a whole thing. It was like, okay, they got to find a trough. Then there's a pig head inscription on it. Which direction is the pig head looking? Go that way. There's a well. Down at the bottom of the well, there's a red cobblestone. You see that red cobblestone? 2 rocks above that is where is where the treasure's buried. I'm like, you explaining this to like a 5-year-old, like a 6-year-old kid, or however old, I don't know, he could be 8, however old Ptolemy is at this time. You're explaining this to a kid, and this is exceedingly complicated. Whereas like if nobody even knows where to begin looking, it doesn't need to be that complicated. It could have just been a thing where they simply go to the well and are like, it's under the red cobblestone. Boom. Or even it's not under the red cobblestone, it's to the one that's, 3 over to the right or 3 over to the left or whatever. Like the whole thing with the trough and the pig inscription, and like even the idea of there being a red cobblestone and it not being under the red cobblestone was weird. And he's like, it's 2 rocks above that. And I'm like, from your perspective, I guess above makes sense. But when you're looking at a flat surface, like there's not 2 rocks above it. There's 2 rocks that are adjacent to it in directions, like 2 rocks that are, say, north or south, east, west, whatever, but above, like that involves stacking. Again, it's me being particular, but I just thought that was a little bit much. Like, okay, this doesn't have to be this complicated, especially when you're explaining it to a kid. And then, then he goes on to have dementia, and it's like, okay, well, how's he supposed to remember? How's he supposed to remember this? And then Coy Dog leaves, and he goes to retrieve a Bible that his mother gave to him. And when he comes out with the Bible, he gets jumped by, I'm assuming, the slave owner and anyone else that he might have been with. I think we're to presume that he ends up getting lynched. I don't recall. I don't think we see it. I think we see them start to hang him or something like that. But we're left to assume that this is how Coy Dog dies. And that was another situation where it's not one of those things where they were giving me information I didn't need. We for sure needed this information, but I just thought it was a little weird to just how complicated this whole here's where the treasure is buried process was. So Ptolemy wakes up because when we left him, he was getting the second shot. Well, in the episode, I believe he got the second shot at the beginning. And he wakes up. No, this was the end of the last episode. I think where he was going through it. And he wakes up in this episode, and he's clearly of more sound mind. He goes to meet with Dr. Rubin, played by Walton Goggins. And he kind of lays out what's going to happen. You're going to get this second shot. You're going to be able to remember everything for, I think he said, 4 to 7 weeks, give or take. And then after that, you might actually be worse. And Robin seems really opposed to this, but Ptolemy agrees, and he wants to do the procedure. I like how he explained how his memory was working when he woke up. Essentially, what it boils down to is that he knows there are things that he should be remembering, but he can't quite remember them yet. So, for example, he knows that there is a treasure that Coy Dog told him about that he needs to find, but he can't remember where it is. And the way he kind of explained it, if I'm remembering correctly, he kind of compared it to like the memories being behind a locked door. And it's like, that the memories are there, but you can't access them because that door is locked. And I thought that was a really nice way of explaining just how his memory is functioning at this time as he's starting to gain these memories back. And I also like how he was more sound of mind as well. Samuel Jackson is doing a lot of very nuanced things to show various degrees of Ptolemy's mental state. Like there's the version that we've seen most of the time so far where he's like really far gone. There's the times where after these prepping shots where he gains some sort of memory and he gains some ability to speak well, carry himself better. Like he walks more confidently, all that kind of stuff. And then we see him later in the episode in a flashback where we see him young, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So also in this episode, and another scene that again, I'm kind of like, and it's not one scene, it's several scenes that make up this one aspect of this plot thread that they wanted to plot line that they wanted to tell in this episode. But WRING shows up again, trying to find Ptolemy to give him his money back. And throughout the course of this episode, we see them kind of, talking, flirting. And that's another thing where I'm just kind of like, why do we need this? Because, if you have say a 10 episode season, yeah, maybe you do want to build a romantic interest for this guy. But the episode's named after his dead ex-wife. And we spent a lot of time watching him flirt with this, well, not watching him flirt, but watching them flirt with each other and build this relationship. And this could be something that ends up being important in these final 3 episodes, but it's only a 6-episode series. And a lot of time was spent on establishing this new relationship with this new woman. I'm like, we still got to find this treasure. We got to solve this mystery of who killed Reggie. Like, there's things that need to happen. And I don't think building a new relationship, a new romantic relationship for Ptolemy should really be taking up this much of our screen time in this episode. It's the same way I felt about him showcasing how well he can remember things. So these are the kind of things that take me out of it a little bit, and I think can make these episodes feel longer than they are. Because you're working on a short time, he's working on short time, and then that where we need to end up. So when we spend all this time with WRING, I'm never going to call her anything other than that. When we spend all this time with her, and we spend all this time with him showcasing how he can remember stuff, it's kind of like, okay, but we got to get this moving though. So, interesting. Another thing that I'm sounding way more critical of this episode than I am, but than I feel, because I did enjoy this episode. But there's also a scene where Hilly's talking with his mother, and he's talking about basically kind of like trying to put it in her mind that Robin is living with him now, but like, Robin's living with him. She might be trying to, grease him up to get his loot. I hear there's loot in there, treasures. He lives like a bum. Like if people find out, they might kick him out of there. And then I think I don't believe he says it, but he implies that, if we can get him out the picture, maybe we can find this treasure that's in his house. And this whole scene, I'm sitting here like, maybe this will make sense later, and it's meant to establish that at the very least, Hilly and potentially his mother are going to have some sort of make some sort of play at getting whatever this treasure is. But why couldn't they showcase that with a feasible plan? Because this scene again felt like a waste, because the whole concept of them being able to get at this money revolved around Ptolemy getting kicked out of the house for living in squalor, but we already know his house is clean now. So, I mean, it's not just tidied up. She did the bug bombs, everything. Like his house is smooth, so this isn't an option. So this whole plan that they spent discussing for this entire scene is implausible. So, like, I'm sitting there like, why did we need this scene? If it's meant to establish that they are plotting, cool. But could you at least have them plot something where I'm like, oh shit, that's a problem. That could be a wrench. That could be a problem down the road. Because that's how, when the scene started, that's what I thought. Like, oh man, they plotting on his money. This could be a problem. Then they're like, yeah, I heard he's living like a bum. And like, maybe we can get him kicked out because he's living so nasty. I'm like, well, I already know he ain't living nasty no more. So this whole plan is a waste. So like, these are the kind of decisions that this episode was making that just didn't really track with me. Like they could have come up with any plan that could have made me could take away from it that Hilly is plotting, and potentially his mom as well are plotting, and whatever this plan is could be something that could be problematic down the road before this series is over. But then I watched it, I'm just like, well, that plan's not feasible, so why was that scene here? So again, those are the kind of decisions that bothered me a little bit. Lastly, we finally get to the point of the episode. Well, not the point of the episode, but the reason for the title, Sensia. Is Sensia or Sensia? Sensia. And I like it. I remember Sensia because it makes me think of Essentia, the water, and I drink Essentia all the fucking time, so I love that water. So when I'm writing in my notes, I'm even calling her Essentia. But we meet Sensia in a flashback where she's at the park. He's Ptolemy's running around. He's got a book tucked into the back of his waistband, and he's reading. And she comes up and flirts with him, and they're getting along well. And then this guy comes up. What's his name? Ezra. And he's I don't know the actor's name, but he played a character called Lala on Black Lightning, the CW hero show, and he was really good on there. And he plays a similar kind of guy on this. And he comes up and he manhandles her. He's clearly an abusive guy. And again, another weird decision in this episode. If you are like make this an interaction that I can buy. If you are Sensia and you are dating someone who is abusive, why would you openly sit and flirt with another guy when your abusive boyfriend is there? Like, even if he's off playing baseball or he's taking a shit, it doesn't matter. He's there. He could potentially just see you from afar. Who is this dude she's over here sitting with, looking all smiley and happy and giggling and all this, all that kind of shit, looking like he's bonding, like they're bonding. Like, why would you do that if you got an abusive boyfriend who is present at whatever function you're at? So again, that was weird to me, because when he came up, at first I'm like, okay, this must be just like, I don't know, a friend of the family or something like that, just an overly aggressive guy who decides he wants to be in a dick measuring contest with Samuel L. Jackson. And it turns out that they were actually dating, and I thought that was such a weird decision. But apparently she was not with the shits, because she dumped him. She said that was a Sunday. She dumped him, and then on Wednesday she was with Ptolemy in his apartment, and they were doing their thing, and he busts in, Ezra, and he's ready to bust some heads. He's ready to bust Ptolemy's head. She's like, yo, we're not together anymore. He's ready to knock a hole in his head, and I'm thinking, oh shit, this is gonna be how he starts to lose his memory. Like he's gonna get hit in the head, and that's gonna be the start of his mental deterioration. But no, Sensia pulls out the heat and shoots him. I think he got shot in the shoulder. She shot him. She tried to shoot him again, and she shoots it to the floor. And then they go out in the hallway, and Ptolemy stops her from finishing him off. And that's the end of that. And later in the episode, not much later, Ptolemy does remember where the treasure is. It's in the spot where she shot into the floor, and when he had to replace the floorboards, that's where he buried this treasure at. So we end up finding that out, and that's how the episode ends, right before he pops open the floor to see, like, and that, I didn't like that cliffhanger either. That was kind of like, I liken that to, if you watch The Walking Dead, the cliffhanger that they did with Glenn, where he looks like he's about to get eaten by zombies. He's like stranded on top of a dumpster or something like that. And this was like the end of maybe like a mid-season finale. So there was gonna be a couple of months before you actually find out what happens to Glenn. And everything that we saw looked like Glenn was dead. But it turns out I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to spoil it to make this point. It turns out Glenn was just hiding under the dumpster, and he somehow survived. And the internet, and myself as well, hated that cliffhanger because it was just done so sloppily. And it's like, what you should have done is either shown us that Glenn was okay or killed him off, and then we spend the 2 or 3 months in between these two parts of the season wondering what the fallout is going to be. Is so-and-so going to retaliate? How are they going to deal with losing Glenn? He's been along the whole time. Something like that. You end on that shocker, and then we can wonder what's going to happen, like what the ramifications are going to be. And I thought this was corny to have him like almost pop up the floor and they cut and the episode's over. Like, maybe we pop it open, we see the treasure, we see what it is, and now we could spend the whole next week wondering, like, okay, now what's going to happen? Like, let's say it's a bunch of money. Oh shit, he found a bunch of money. What's going to happen? Is somebody going to come after him? What, anything. So I thought that was just kind of corny to have it like, oh, we're about to pop over the floor, credits. Like, I don't know. I thought that was a weak move, but that's how we end the episode. I know I like everything I said was like actually pretty critical of this episode, but I do really enjoy this show. But I think it heavily relies on the performances and the chemistry that we see from and between Samuel L. Jackson and Dominique Fishback. They continue to make the show really compelling, even when there are scenes that make me scratch my head, like, why would you do it that way? So, again, I'm still going to continue to cover this show. I mean, it's only 6 episodes. Why not? It's Friday. It airs on a Friday. It's not a big deal. But, yeah, I had some issues with this one. So, hopefully, season 4, episode 4 will rebound a little bit better. And I'll sit in front of you guys and be a little bit less critical and a little bit more captivated by the latest entry in this season. So, until then, next week, peace.